Now this one is just some general gripes and grievances and ideas for how to work around these problems or nullify these problems. And of course the only real solution, besides getting yanked out or having everybody that we don't like suddenly melt, well, I haven't seen anyone melting and I haven't seen the sky open up yet, so until then, the only solution right now is if a lot of humans with good hearts wake up, but I wouldn't know about that because a lot of these people are being silenced, and you should be aware that there's all these undergrounds, so to speak, of things. It's really hard to say because people keep these insanely tight secrets. I don't know how they do it. It's like they really have lost their soul and they have lost their free will, and that it's like they're disabled from saying the truth and that it can't come out. I would bet even if these people were tortured, they wouldn't say a word. They'd probably shout some misdirection or shout some noises, but I don't think they would even say a word of truth. Well, for another thing, there is no truth in them, but a lot of the time, I wonder if there used to be the ability for them to have truth in them, and then they lost that ability. And it's very important to tell the truth. Any way you can, get the truth out, but without having yourself directly involved in it. You can't put your name in it. It can't even be an ego thing, but people try and get egotistical about it. Like somebody took credit for discovering penicillin. That is a mold that grows in the kitchen. How could anyone claim credit for a mold that grows in the kitchen? Or hot air balloons or bicycles or airplanes? These mechanisms have always been possible, so how come they are attributed to certain names? Never mind the fact that there's no way that those people invented it. It's just, okay, there's these fake people that have these stories of discovering technology that we use today, but that's probably not what happened. And then you have completely fictitious people like Marie Curie, as in Mercury, supposedly discovering radioactive substances. Those don't exist either. Fortunately, more people are realizing the nukes hoax, but there's so many more things to be aware of that they're fake, because fear and dread, well, some people believe in this concept called loosh, and that sounds like a dirty word, but apparently it's negative personal energy that people and animals, they give off when they're in distress. I don't know, I'm just repeating stuff, but some people believe in a thing called loosh, which is negative energy, and that torturing people and animals will make them produce loosh, this energy that can be harvested by, I don't know, the reptilians. But you will probably notice that famous people and influential figures will have a lot of reptilian symbolism on them. I don't know if they're literally lizards, but for all, I guess you could call them shape-shifting lizards just for fun. Because you might have heard the term shapeshifter applied to a certain group of people that will constantly switch sides between being on side A and side C, not side B. Side A or C. You know what I mean? Some things, if I said them outright, this would be taken down if I'd said certain things. There is no freedom of speech. But you can get creative and work around it. And now here's just a general gripe that's kind of been on my mind for a while. In the 90s, the internet was just some novelty thing that could have a very good, serious application for businesses and companies ordering or contacting other companies over a long distance. It could be used by people contacting other people over a long distance. You could share different kinds of digital media, and that's all well and good. But it used to just be a glorified telephone. And now this glorified telephone has shaped the way things are done. And that's not right. It's not natural. And on a similar note, some people will say that mass transit, like trains, have destroyed many communities. But that would be a different thing for more knowledgeable people to talk about, and they really should talk about it. It's important to get information and get it out there as fast as you can, even if you're not sure. Just present it as a theory and see if anyone adds on to it, see what other people have to say. If it's interesting, share it. And so, back on the internet. Now, I remember in the 90s, it had just cool stuff that I enjoyed looking at, fan websites for media things, Pokemon, because I was into that when I was a child. Or just sites of interest, or people just writing about things that they enjoyed. I remember these personal websites of people that would have all of these different pages just talking about random off-the-wall things. and it was just for fun. And they used to have web rings because search engines didn't work very well back then. And then for a while Google worked very well as a search engine, but it always had these paid for slots. And now Google hides everything. And some people have a theory that movies and, the word thing is sometimes it's an unhelpful word because thing could be a piece of media, a phenomenon, an event, a happening, an idea. And that's not very helpful. It's too broad of a word. You have to narrow it down. But events with names, theories with names, ideologies that have names. Well, anyway, people have a theory that some natural, or perhaps not natural, phenomenons that have been given names, when some people that are trying to conduct the general consciousness hear about these things, these phenomenons and events and ideas, they will make a movie about it, so that if you just search anything on Google, you're going to get all of these results for movies, television, music albums, podcasts. You're just going to find corporate stuff, money-related stuff, and it's not helpful because sometimes, like so many times when we would be looking for information or a starting point on something to look into, we'd only find Hollywood shit. And as I just talked about fake money, that's how this stuff is funded. But how did the fake money get that kind of power? What made everybody just stop what they were doing and accept fake money as some kind of a substitute for work, like working on things that matter? People don't think much of food service workers, but flipping burgers is something that benefits society, like it or not. Like even if you're a ranting vegan or you have like legitimate complaints about the overconsumption of meat in our society, and that's valid. Flipping burgers is a job, and there's people that do rely on convenient food. That is the way the world runs right now. It shouldn't be that way, but it is that way, and that's how it is, like it or not. So people doing labor, janitors, they're very underappreciated. People that do things that benefit others, that make a difference. If there were no janitors, can you imagine? There's this thing, the tragedy of the commons. Everything is somebody else's problem. Even in past times that I've heard, before the modern world as we know it, there's always this tragedy of the commons where a big problem is somebody else's problem, and why would anybody invest hours fixing it? Because, if you spend hours cleaning up something, you turn around, it's a mess again. And it's like fighting a losing battle. And it's exhausting. But, I already lost my point. I don't care. Here's a word of advice. If you find an interesting topic, go for it. If it's just come back to whatever you need to come back to, there's always going to be a next time because this never ends. So anyway, if I forget a topic or whatever, if I wander off and get lost, I'm just going to come up with something new to talk about because I have to just keep going. And there's always a next time, and after I do like a ramble, I can do something focused later on. So you just got to keep going. So I remember the internet, and it used to just be this fun thing that could be put to a very serious application. But fast forward to today, and the world has changed. Now, in the 90s, there's a lot of malware on the internet, a lot of spyware, a lot of pedos, a lot of creeps, a lot of Trekkies, a lot of furries, a lot of weird degenerates, shady business being conducted. And that was there from the very beginning. A lot of the malware has been filtered out, but Windows has malware on it by design, and that's why it crashes so much. I heard in France you can get in trouble for deleting malware on your computer that the government mandates, but I don't know. That's just something I heard. America's full of smears against other countries. Like America's rulers really want you to believe that you have the best life here, and they just smear other countries, and like they'll paint the Middle East as being terrorist Urka-Durka land, but if you actually manage to look at photos of the Middle East, the people there are pretty much the same as the people over here. And Islam's fake, and I'm very glad to know that. The controllers want you to be afraid of nukes and boogeymen to scare you, and some people might say that they want to harvest your fear energy or your loosh. Could be. I don't know. Because with the way so many truths are hidden, there's just so many things that we're not told. It could be that there are shape-shifting lizard people that can suddenly go between being 5 feet to 8 feet without any kind of mass transfer. I don't know. Anything's possible. I mean, I can't prove I'm not in a simulation. And sometimes I think that there is kind of proof that, for lack of a better word, something that could be called a simulation is going on. But the problem is simulation refers to something being a copy of an original. and I think we're in the original. Yeah, the simulation's a flawed word because it implies a copy or a replication of something. Anyhow, so there's always these freaks and creeps on the internet, and I would personally say that the golden age of human involvement on the internet was the early to mid 2000s. A lot of elitists, and I'm thinking of a fat Martin at a computer griping about ignoramuses and saying that normies ruin everything, when a lot of normies will act stupid on the internet because there's something about posting on the internet that makes people, including myself, lose 100 IQ points. Because there's no consequences. When you're just bashing on a keyboard and watching text appear, there's nothing at stake. People will write things online to a person they know in real life and get really harsh and say things that they might regret, and then the person that receives it will take a snapshot and start sharing it around, and then you have an internet drama based in real life going on. This interface, this middleman, as it were, makes you lose half your brain or more. Okay, I've been there. Alright, but, so it's easy to be stupid on the internet because people can't punch you, but they will share what you post. So, anyhow, see, there were these freaks and creeps, right? They would live on the internet. You know that Trekkie personality type, the hardcore escapists, they retreat into a fantasy land. When D&D came out, a lot of people started freaking out because there's always going to be these freaks and people that want attention and drama screaming about how outraged they are that something exists. And D&D was one flavor of the week when it comes to outrage. And it was basically an imaginary world that nerds in real life could sit at a table and play pretend that they're fighting monsters and bringing each other back to life and all that stuff. And then when you have two computers connected through some phone line, you basically have D&D on the computer. And so when people realize, hey, I'm not looking at anyone face to face, I'm just looking at text on a screen, I'm going to be a 10-foot tall fox dragon with 5 heads that lives in a castle because it's the internet and I can do that. And you just get these communities of people doing that. And the people that were on the internet back then who were being dragon furries in outer space on the internet, they had this technological know-how that was necessary back then, and in some cases it still is today. You know, these escapist people and extreme programmers are there's a lot of overlap. That's just how it is, you know, that you'll notice that things tend to be combined in a certain way. For instance, here's a funny example. If you look on some internet store and you look at Snuggies, you'll notice that people that buy Snuggies tend to buy diapers and Nutella. So think about that, you know, or people that buy digital scales for the kitchen tend to buy small plastic bags too. And so you're going to notice that things come in these combinations, and personalities and interests and skill sets are like that. They tend to come in a cluster, and you'll notice several people will all be into the exact same things. So that was the early internet, and I'm sure because these people were literally living on the internet pretty much. I'm sure that if they could have a Lotus Eater machine, they'd be all over that. But VR still sucks, and the 90s was making a big deal out of revolutionary VR, and today nobody wants to buy VR headsets, and there's not much VR consumer technology, and 30 years after the 90s, people are buying VR headsets, and they're going, these suck, and there's no games for them. On that note, actually, people have mentioned that you don't see any new developments in technology like washing machines and vacuum cleaners. You only find new advancements in computer technology. Anyhow, so the people that were on the internet all the time learning about computers and programming are Star Trek furries, pretty much, and those people pioneered and shaped a lot of how things are done. And someone who wants to dedicate all of their free time to being an outer space furry they don't really get along in daily human activities very well. They tend to be antisocial, and they don't know how to relate to people because they just want to avoid people and roleplay on the internet when they're not getting paid for writing code. Those people, they had a huge hand in how our world is shaped today. I guess a very crappy example would be grasping at straws here. What if we went down some alternate history timeline and the world today was revolving around pocket calculators? That's not a very good example. What if history developed to the point where the world revolved around passing notes in class? That's not good. I don't know. It's okay to sound dumb. and that's going to be a point I bring up some other time. Anyway, I guess that's the end of this part.